welcome to the We Talk Health podcast, the official podcast of West Tennessee Healthcare. I'm your host, Kara Mobley, and on today's episode, we are talking all about DNA Day. And on my show today, I have our genetic counselor, Ashlee Vargason, with the Kirkland Cancer Center with me today. Welcome to the show, Ashlee.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So I, as just a regular person of the town, have never heard of DNA Day or a genetic counselor. So this will be a good episode to kind of just let people know, just kind of get the information out there of, kind of what this day is and what a genetic counselor does. So I want to just start off by asking you, when did you get started? How did you get this role with West Tennessee Healthcare and all that?
Yeah, so I just started in January, actually.
All right.
So haven't been here long, but I grew up here in Jackson and lived in the Maryland, D.C. area for a while.
Okay.
But I knew the Kirkland Cancer Center hadn't had a genetic counselor in a long time, like 6 or 7 years. So I'd reached out when we started talking about moving back home to be closer to our families. And so I have started in January and really thankful and excited to be back here. And so we're working on creating a genetics department within the Kirkland Cancer Center and hopefully starting to see patients this summer. But my role is to help provide genetic counseling services to the patients at Kirkland who have cancer to help tailor their treatment and care based on their genetic makeup and hopefully see patients who do not have cancer to try to learn more about what are their risk of developing cancer based on their genetics.
Yeah, so I want to get into that, but I first want to ask you, what was the schooling like? How does one get into genetic counseling?
Yeah, so like you, I had never heard of a genetic counselor until I went to...
Sounds very official.
Yes. I went to college at Mississippi State, and they, one of my advisors had brought up genetic counseling as a potential career field because I just started out as like a biology major. And so I had never heard of it either. I was like, well, let's check it out and see. So I started to look more into it, did an internship in South Carolina. And so it was something that I had no idea was a path for healthcare, but it combines a lot of what I loved of biology and science with kind of psychology background and counseling. So I get to spend a lot more time with my patients, like an hour-long visit to really get to know them and their families and talk really in depth about how genetics plays a role in their health conditions.
Great. Yeah. So I know you mentioned you work with patients, you spend a little bit more time with them. So kind of in general, what's like a day in the life of a genetic counselor?
Yeah, I guess so.
Or for you specifically.
Yeah. There are genetic counselors that do all kinds of different specialties. Mine specifically is in cancer. So like I said, I spend about an hour along with a patient of going through their medical history, their family history, focused more on health conditions like cancer in the family. And then we talk a little bit more about, based on that history, what are their risk of their cancer being hereditary or the cancer in the family? And what would it mean if they had a genetic predisposition to develop cancer?
Right.
If that would tailor their treatment with medications or surgeries that would be more recommended for them. Or if they don't have cancer, if there are certain screenings or ways we can try to prevent cancer from happening.
Right.
Like and surgeries, things like that.
Sure. So are people coming to you from like recommendations from their doctors? Because you were saying, some of it's preventative. So are people coming to you that have already been working with Kirkland Cancer Center on cancer treatment, or how are people getting set?
Yeah, kind of a combination of the Kirkland providers identifying like the patient may be at a higher risk of developing or already having cancer if they are at higher risk of having a genetic cause for their cancer, to do genetic testing through usually a blood test or saliva test. But then also other providers like gynecologists or their primary care physicians asking those questions. Do you have a family history of cancer?
The family history.
Yeah. There's some red flags that pop up. They may say, oh, you should speak to a genetic counselor a little bit more if genetic testing is a good option for you.
Yeah. So I feel like it kind of goes along with like the screenings as well. So it's kind of all, it's just an extra step involved in, the preventative, the understanding of it.
Yeah, just to learn a little bit more about your specific risk, and if you need a little bit extra screenings than the general population,
right?
To hopefully catch cancer as early as possible when it's more treatable, to be more proactive, or if there's some lifestyle medications or lifestyle changes you can do to try to lower that risk of cancer. So
right. And so genetic counseling. You said blood work, saliva work. You're thinking about what does genetics mean. So we're talking about DNA Day. So DNA Day is April 25th.
Yes.
So we're releasing this podcast on DNA Day. So kind of tell me the history of DNA Day, kind of we're really wanting to get the awareness out of what this field is, what the importance of that is with what Kirkland Cancer Center is doing.
Yeah. So DNA Day has been around since around 2003. It was when Congress passed the kind of law on celebrating DNA Day every year on the 25th of April. And the goal of it is to raise awareness about genetics, genomics, and how important it is in someone's health and research that's going on. So the main goal was to kind of celebrate the ending of the Human Genome Project in 2003. So that was a project to sequence the entire genome and map that out so that we can start to do research and studies about what our genes mean, how many do we have.
Right.
So that was to bring awareness about that, but also to celebrate the discovery of the DNA structure, like that typical double helix with like a little ladder, spinning ladder that you probably have seen.
Anytime you see those science, I watch a lot of Forensic Files, so they'll always do the little
you
DNA.
always see in the background or Jurassic Park with a little DNA structure. So that wasn't discovered that DNA looked like that until around the 1950s by Watson and Crick.
Watson and Crick.
Yeah.
I was doing my own little Google research on this, and I was like, Watson and Crick. I remember that from high school biology. So I feel like a lot of people be like, oh yeah, those names sound familiar.
Yeah. They helped discover the structure of DNA. So you hear about them a lot. There's Rosalind Franklin too, who helped kind of get that process started. You don't hear as much about her. But then a lot of people, when I bring up genetics and appointments, they think of like the Punnett squares and Gregor Mendel and the pea plant. If that rings any bells too.
The different color eyes and all that.
Yeah, all those kinds of traits.
So that's always a really cool thing when you learn the history of it and, what we're living in today with the technology that's available, especially, with Kirkland Cancer Center, is to have that information and to be able to use that information for, preventative measures and things. So that's always, that's a really cool thing, and we definitely want people to know about that because, from before that, you were just kind of, I guess, taking a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
Or you were just wondering. So now this is good to have that information at the ready.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who have cancer, have a family history, are always looking for that reason why and what can I do about it if they can help their family members.
Yeah. I feel like it just answering questions or just having the knowledge maybe takes a little bit. I feel like for me, it would take a little bit of anxiety off of it just to have an answer like, oh, it's a genetic thing.
Yeah. A lot of people say knowledge is power. And, in this case, there are things that hopefully we can try to do about that too. So I think there can be a silver lining to learning that information.
Sure. So with this research, how has that helped cancer research in terms of you when someone sees you? What is the process? Like, how does it, once you talk to someone and get to know them, do a test of some sort, how is that helpful to them? Yeah.
So, I think that genetics has really changed cancer treatment it's no longer a one-size-all approach to cancer treatment. We now want to focus more on each person's genetic makeup to tailor their treatment to be more effective for them. So by doing genetic testing, sometimes that can be done in my setting to look at your genes to see what were you born with that could have explained where cancer came from so that there are medications or certain therapies that can be more effective for you the first time.
It would seem to me maybe that it's like, instead of just saying, oh, let's do all of these tests and just see which one works.
Right.
This is more like, we're not going to just put you through a bunch of things that we don't know if will work.
Yeah, it's more effective.
Yeah, more effective
time.
at the first, and try to catch it sooner as well.
Yeah. We try to, I think a big goal of it is to try to minimize those side effects you think of with cancer treatment, and to try to find that treatment as early as possible that's going to work for that patient.
Right.
So it's really exciting that we're getting to that point and just not, doing the same thing for everyone.
Right, exactly. Yeah, a tailored approach is
absolutely
obviously the best way. So since January, how has it been going for you in this role? What have you noticed, or have you learned anything or gotten any really cool stories or anything like that?
Not yet, but I think that it's been really exciting. Everyone has been so supportive of bringing a genetic counselor into the mix, of how that's going to impact the Kirkland patients, the Jackson community. And so I've been really working hard to create this clinic, but also let providers know in the area that I'm here, so that more patients can have access to genetic counseling and genetic testing that maybe didn't in the past. Or luckily, a lot of the providers here that I've talked to know about genetics and are sending some testing for their patients. So hopefully I can be a big resource to help patients not just get the testing, but understand what their results mean for them. What are my next steps I need to take to hopefully prevent cancer? Or how do I share this with my daughter or son about their risk of cancer?
And just letting the community know and letting the doctors in this area know, hey, this is another resource where you can send people to kind of help in their overall treatment plan. So for KCC, for Kirkland Cancer Center, how do you see this going? I know you mentioned wanting to set up a clinic. How do you think this will help kind of with the treatment or going forward in your role here?
I think that having a genetics provider and working with the oncologist and radiation oncologist is going to be very helpful to just be a voice on how genetics plays a role in the cancer treatment. So I've already been able to join many meetings and bring up I think this patient would be a good candidate for genetic testing.
So you're advocating on their behalf as
try
well
to advocate
for new things.
Even if I haven't seen the patient yet, just being part of that team and giving them insight of, if their patient has a mutation that they're not as familiar with, to help give them some background of what kind of screenings they may need. So, they are working a lot on treating the patient with those therapies, and they often do testing on their actual cancer to figure out what's the genetic makeup of that. But it's good to compare it to what's the genetic makeup of that person from birth, and what could they have had passed down from their mom or dad.
And so would they get kind of any of the blood work done before they meet you, or is that something they could do when they meet you?
It's something that we do after they meet with me, because it's really important to understand what all you can learn from genetic testing. Not everyone wants to know about certain cancer risk or other health conditions, or it can be scary information to talk about. So that's where my background of counseling comes in to provide a little bit more emotional support.
That makes sense.
Let them know what test would be the best thing for their family, and help them make that decision if they even want testing. What do they want to be tested for? And then once we decide what test is best for the patient, it's a little different, where I don't necessarily say you need this test, but here's what your options are, and help the patient decide what they need, and then help guide them through what their results mean for them, for not just them, but their whole family.
Right. And you said that up top, and it just kind of clicked for me just now when you said that. It's like you're giving them kind of scientific information, but you're doing it in a kind of a counseling way. Because, you don't want to, this is a scary time for people.
It is.
And it's a lot of information, and it's very high tech kind of stuff. So, it's just having someone there that is able to kind of explain it to you with the kind of the psychological aspect, the counseling portion.
Try to break down these complicated topics to, make sense, so that they can make those decisions. And I feel really lucky to be in a position to do that, because I know not many providers have that amount of time.
Exactly, because they have so many patients, and
so many things to talk about.
And just having someone, being able to come to someone, get that information, have more time to discuss it is So they don't feel like they're rushing or, things like that. So.
Yeah, I get to really listen and gather someone's family history
and
story.
And you're right. And you can be kind of a liaison between them and the provider and give them the information. Yeah. Because that is one of the things for me as a patient. It's kind of like, I want to give you my whole life story. Not my whole life story, but I want to give you, like, context. If I'm having a pain, like, well, I did this last week. And, you kind of want to let them know, but you also are aware that it's like, this is only like a 15-minute
I have
appointment.
Limited time here. Yeah. So that's what I think is so special about what I get
something
to do.
Something as important as that, you want to be able to kind of
spend the time they need. And we're talking about, at least for me and the specialty I work in, is cancer. Right. And that's obviously a very heavy topic, an emotional topic, whether you have cancer or family members that passed. And that kind of brings me back to my story of how I got to Kirkland. Was my grandmother was a patient there.
Okay.
And she was treated for her ovarian cancer by Dr. Fouché there. And so, just seeing that process in my own family, I can really empathize with what they're going through and understand what family members are going through and hopefully convey that.
And especially, with cancer, it's touched everyone's lives. So that's good that we all kind of have someone that we know or
we can
within our lives.
It.
Us, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great, yeah. And I've met Dr. Fouché. He's great.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
Yeah, all the doctors there are just so great. Yeah. So many nice things about Kirkland Cancer Center.
Yeah, so supportive.
So for DNA Day, are you guys doing anything or... Should we wear like a certain color?
We're just going to have some resources out in the lobby at the Kirkland Cancer Center about DNA, maybe some fun little activities. Yeah. Patients have a long time waiting and just probably need something to distract themselves.
Exactly, yeah.
But a lot of genetics providers on DNA Day try to do more educational events to teach people more about genetics. So I'm going to be giving a lecture on what genetic counseling is to Loyola College, which I'm really excited about. So there's lots of different ways people can celebrate by just talking about it, doing projects, watching a documentary.
Yeah, and definitely in the show notes of this episode, I'll try to find some resources people can look at just to kind of give them a little bit more of an idea.
There's definitely some really interesting things happening in genetics that you can learn more about. So that's kind of the goal, is just to be a little bit more educated on what's out there.
Right.
But you can always ask your doctor about it. There are genetic counselors in Memphis or Nashville. So if you want to go ahead and have that conversation, they can refer you to a genetic counselor, or I should hopefully be starting to accept referrals in about end of June to early
so
July.
Just in a few months here, we'll start being able to have physicians refer their patients to you outside of Kirkland Cancer Center.
Outside of Kirkland Cancer Center. Just ask your doctor for a referral to Kirkland to see a genetic counselor, and but right now just kind of open to Kirkland cancer patients.
Right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ashlee, for coming on. It was really great to meet you, and I'm so glad that you're here now, and you're going to try to get revved up with this, and I'm interested to hear how it goes later on. Yeah. But might try to reconnect with you and see how it's going. Because, that's something that's interesting to me, but also it's like high school biology. That's really all I know about DNA. So.
That's what a lot of people know.
Yeah. So. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to We Talk Health. This podcast is not intended to replace any medical advice. Nothing said in this podcast is intended to supersede or supplement the direction of your medical caretakers. If you have any questions or would like to request a topic, you can reach out to us at wetalkhealthpodcast@gmail.com.